you had a bit of a lucky escape, didn't you, really? I mean,
Yeah.
see the state of GB News
Oh,
now, and
God.
it's
The
but when
definition of controlled opposition now, Carol, the definition of it.
it's got to be, hasn't it? I mean, with all the stuff with reform and everything, it's like, they're just in complete denial of what's going on. Now, then that's the big question. Who's paying these organisations? Like Talk TV, I think, is the same. And they just buy into everything that you imagine the government wants people
Hmm.
to hear. The BBC have been like that for donkey's years. Channel 4 has always been like that. But now these two supposedly independent media organisations are being obviously, I don't want to say bought, but they've got to be bought, haven't
Well,
they?
well, the
Bought
thing is,
and paid
but
for.
oh, Carol McGiffin, it's taken me a long time to convince you to do this.
I know, I'm sorry, but you know what I'm like. I've got a bit of Zoom phobia.
But you're here. You're sort of coming out of semi-retirement for me. Is that fair to say?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I have a couple of other jobs, but yeah, yes, absolutely, I am. And I haven't been on a screen for a long, long time, apart from maybe, the other thing on Instagram. But no, I mean, it's got to be at least a year, 2 years, maybe. So yeah, it's especially for you, Dan.
Well,
I missed you so much, and I haven't seen you for so
I
long.
know it
So
has been too long. It really, really has been too long. And the last time I saw you, Caroline, I have to thank you. I was in the middle of my cancellation hell, and you were an
yeah,
absolute rock, which you can't say for many people in this industry. So I so
well, yeah,
appreciate
I felt for you. I really felt for you. But look at you now.
it. Now we're here.
God,
We're going.
you're right back. Yes, good for you.
And look, Carol, we've got so much to talk about. Obviously, I want to come to everything that's gone on at our former employer, Woke ITV, as I call it later in the show. But we've got to kick off with the news. And I think the most disturbing development since we last spoke, although I'm sure it's something, to be honest, that you did predict, was the fact that now in the United Kingdom, we actually have political prisoners. We actually have in our country people who are behind bars because they challenged the narrative, they posted something on X, they posted something on Facebook that maybe the authorities didn't like. I mean, this is truly dystopian, but something that I guess you saw coming after COVID.
Yeah, it's really quite disturbing, isn't it? Really, that people just for having an opposite opinion to something and dare to criticise something the government is pushing at the time is it it it, it really is 1984, isn't it? It's like you can't have wrong think. You can't think any other way other than the way that they're trying to tell you to think. And that people can get locked up. In a way, I think that a lot of these, the cases at the moment are there really to scare the population into not having wrong
Yes.
think and not thinking the opposite way because there's so much publicity around them as well. And I don't include Tommy Robinson in that. I think that Tommy Robinson has always been an enemy of the state. They've always treated him like, he's an absolute criminal. I mean, they let people out of jail for less. I mean, some of the criminals that are roaming the streets at the moment that you read, you go, oh, he's got 18 months for raping kids or whatever. And you think, hang on, and Tommy Robinson spent a good chunk of the last few years in prison. And other people go to prison, like Bernie Spothoff, that we both know, and the Lucy Connolly case as well. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous and it's disgusting. It gets criticised by other leaders around the world. And it's like, what is going on? Why aren't people allowed to say what they think anymore?
But we did see it over COVID, didn't we? I mean, Peter Lynch, who was the political prisoner behind bars, died. We're told, Carol, of course, that this is a suicide, nothing to see here, nothing to investigate. Who actually knows what happened behind bars? Because You had Sly News reporting the fact that these Muslim gangs who control most of our prisons now were actually planning to target people who were imprisoned over the course of those so-called riots. And I say so-called riots, by the way, because actually, if you look into what was going on at that time, a lot of those riots were infiltrated by Antifa to try and create like a far-right bogeyman, which actually all of the official reports, Carol, have now admitted wasn't there. But Peter Lynch, right? He is someone who we would have agreed with on virtually every position, right? When it came to Brexit and globalism and the authoritarianism. He was famous, Carol, for holding that sign, which simply challenged a whole load of elements of corruption in terms of the World Economic Forum and Davos. I mean, all things that you have spoken about over the past few years. Why the hell did he end up in jail and is now dead? And the fact that that is not a national story, I think, is what shocks me so much.
Yeah, it never is though, is it? I mean, that is truly terrifying. And all he was doing is what, we've been trying to do for a long, long time, is tell the truth. Now, the government doesn't want anybody to know what they're doing, what's going on. And so if they jail these people, we don't know, you're right, we don't know what happened to him in prison, but every time when they say, oh, there was a suicide, I mean, he might well have killed himself, because what a terrible situation to end up in for literally telling the truth and trying to warn people what's coming and what's happening. But it's when it's like, oh, let's not talk about this now, because what will people think? It really is. It's like the corruption and the gaslighting and everything that the government is indulging in at the moment it is like reading 1984. It is exactly like that now. People are watched all the time. They're being monitored all the time. They're talking about bringing in a brick card. They're talking about digital currency. All of these things mean that everyone who thinks they have freedom really doesn't anymore. And this is what people have been trying to warn other people about. But you know what, Dan? I think the biggest problem is people, they can't hear it, and it's mainly because they can't handle the truth. It's kind of too awful and too terrible, isn't it, for people to get their head around. It did start in COVID, and people then couldn't get their head around the truth. They couldn't believe that what was going on might not have been real, if you like. And then you had all the stuff with the vaccines, and people wanted to believe that these vaccines were, they were needed. Of course they weren't needed. Nobody needed those vaccines. But everybody kind of went along with it because they couldn't think of the alternative, and that is that the government was actually trying to harm you. So, and I don't know how you get around that, because, up to a point at the moment, I'm living in the south of France, having a lovely life, and I've kind of got my head in the sand over a lot of things, because it drives you mad if you think about it too much, and you talk about and try and deal with what's going on all the time. It does get you down, doesn't it?
Yeah, no,
it's
it
like,
does. And that's why some people choose to bury their head in the sand. And I think especially when you see the targeting, right, of a man like Peter Lynch, simply a demonstrator trying to wake the world up, right, now dead, or actually a housewife or a grandmother like Lucy Connolly or Julie Sweeney. It's almost like what the government is saying, Carol, is it's just not worth challenging the narrative. You will lose everything. We will take your freedom. We will take your family from you. We might even take your life. And if you're someone who's got a family life, who isn't in the media, who isn't working in this world, I can completely understand why loads of people have just deleted their social media accounts and thought, I can't take the risk. And that is chilling.
It is, actually, because self-censorship is how they shut you up, because you have to self-censor because you're kind of aware of what might happen. I mean, I can't actually see them, nipping down to the south of France to drag me back to prison. They might actually. I can see them doing
well,
that.
the police did turn up at Alison Pearson's house. I mean, when that happened, I was a bit like, oh, wow, this is another level, because you actually are going for mainstream journalists. I mean, Alison Pearson is one of the only, I would argue, brave journalists working in the mainstream media left in the UK.
Yeah.
And they did come for her.
Yeah, well, this is it. They can come for anybody, anyone who says anything. Or, I watch videos on YouTube of people who have had the police come round and acting in a really aggressive and shocking way because they've put a post out on social media. Now, if that's not a warning to people to just don't ever challenge it yourself, just self-censor every single time. I've seen a lot on Twitter lately, sorry, I still call it Twitter, X,
Yes.
of people saying that they have voluntarily been self-censoring because they're kind of worried about what happens. And then they say, well, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. But you don't know if they're doing it or not, because these threats are real to the population. Don't challenge the narrative, as you say. Don't you dare challenge the narrative, because we'll come for you, and they will. They absolutely will. If it happens to them, it will happen to you.
And Carol, from a, how do you put it, I guess a celebrity point of view or a showbiz entertainment point of view, how do you get your head around, and what do you think is going on when you look at Hugh Edwards, paedophile, covered up by the BBC for decades, announced the late Queen's death on air, doesn't spend a day behind bars, is on some gold-plated state pension for the rest of his days, earning, £400,000 a year or whatever it is. Meanwhile, and I think it is persecution, but it's something we can debate and discuss. But meanwhile, you look at people who are on the other side of the argument. So I would put Russell Brand in that category, the Tate brothers in that category, and the lawfare is unrelenting for them. But first, these days, we're living through economic whiplash, soaring prices, vanishing savings, and headlines that seem designed to confuse more than inform. We're told this is all normal, that history's been rewritten for our own good, and that embracing these changes is the only path forward. But every outlet tells a different version of reality, and the so-called fact checkers are just enforcing the approved narrative. Luckily, there's a solution. It's Ground News, hands down the easiest way to stay informed. It cuts through all the bias and spin so you can actually see what's going on and make up your own mind. I have it on my phone and in my bookmarks online because it's become so essential to my daily life. You can see for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. But I want to show you this incredible website and app in action. So let's use the breaking story of Donald Trump agreeing to cut tariffs on UK auto, steel and aluminium as part of a trade deal with Britain, one that could reshape global trade and has sparked debate on both sides of the political aisle. So on Ground News, you can see quite clearly in one place that over 500 sources are covering the story. But then what Ground News does is instantly show how it's being covered, broken down by whether those organizations lean to the left or the right. This is called the bias distribution chart. Then if you scroll down, you can actually see every headline about the story, but along with the political bias and ownership of the publication. So most of the coverage is from outlets in the political center, but here's where it gets interesting. 49% of the sources come from outlets owned by giant media conglomerates, so no wonder the narratives feel so coordinated. When looking at the headlines, the left covered the story with skepticism. Wired fixated on the struggling reputation of Jaguar and framed the deal as a potential way to resurrect the brand. Bloomberg chose vague language, calling it a framework, which subtly questions whether the deal is even real. But the coverage on the right-leaning outlets was far more confident, with GB News celebrating a major victory for UK auto manufacturers and the New York Sun calling it a full and comprehensive trade deal that strengthens US-UK ties. Now, my favourite feature is actually the Ground News blind spot feed. It surfaces upwards of 20 stories every day that receive the majority of coverage from one side of the political spectrum. So if you love the news like I do, the blind spot feed is the best way to get a balanced perspective on what's happening. Go to ground.news/outspoken or scan the QR code to subscribe today and get 40% off the same Vantage plan I use for unlimited access. That's ground.news/outspoken. patreon.com/outspoken. But now, back to the show.
Yeah, it is. It's, I don't know, it's really hard because, a lot of people just accuse those people that you've just named as controlled opposition, and everything that happens to them is they're supposedly in this giant club, and that's the problem. The Hugh Edwards, that's a fine example of just being protected in a club that we're not members of. And so I'm not sure about the Tate brothers. I've never really trusted them, but I don't hate them, and I don't think they should be being locked up every 5 minutes. Definitely, Tommy Robinson has never spoken an untrue word in his life and shouldn't be locked up either. But I do think there are very few people that you can name that might be in that club, because they're all
the thing
protected by politicians, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, because of course you can look at individual cases, right? And of course we're meant to live in a world where you're innocent until proven guilty, and Russell Brand and the Tate brothers have actually been convicted of no crime, right? Now, that may change. Let's look at the court case. I've got my own personal views. I do believe that they are victim of state lawfare, actually, on both sides of the Atlantic. But let's see what happens in the trial. But I mean, Hugh Edwards is guilty. He has been found guilty.
Exactly.
There's no question about that. And so it absolutely feels like there are these double standards which grip the mainstream. And actually, Carol, it's interesting, the Tommy Robinson thing, because obviously we had to exist in the mainstream media for all of these years, and we know what it's like, and that's why we've now called it out. But it was impossible to have an intelligent conversation about Tommy Robinson in the mainstream media, wasn't it? I mean, I imagine if you had tried to raise his name on Loose Women, it's just like an immediate do not go there. And actually it was the same at The Sun, it was the same at Talk, it was the same at GB News. Even the apparent right wing or centre right mainstream media organisations will not allow you to have that conversation.
Yeah, because I used to have to sit in meetings where everybody would just say the most despicable things. Like they say the same things about the Andrew Tate and the Tate brothers, President Donald Trump as well. And when we were in the meetings and not on the screen, of course I would stand up for these people to the absolute horror of my colleagues and most of the crew. I mean, it was quite unbelievable, really. Like if I'd say something like, oh, well, I actually quite like Donald Trump. It was as though I'd said, you're something really personal about one of their members of their family or something. Like really, really, like I was evil and nasty, and like, the disbelief was just incredible. But it's the same with all of them. They will automatically say that people are either sexist or right wing or far right. Usually they say not even right wing, and that is especially with Russell Brand as well, who some anonymous woman will come out of the woodwork from God knows how long, the Channel 4 documentary that they made, that they didn't name a single person, and not one of the people who was accusing him. And he was literally dragged through the mud for that. And as everyone knows, mud sticks. Well, it kind of does, but he's doing all right now. I believe he lives in America
but that's still
now.
trying to lock him up. I mean, they're literally trying to lock him up.
Yeah.
And I think the point with Brand, and this is where you see the corruption of the mainstream media, Carol, is they did not give a shit when he was backing Ed Miliband. They did not give a damn about his history when he was an Owen Jones fanboy. As soon as Russell Brand woke up, and he's one of these interesting people, isn't he? You certainly can't.
It sounds weird saying that now, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It does. But I mean,
like
he
that.
was. The thing is, look, you can't really place him on the political spectrum, can you? He's a challenger of globalism, and he would argue that he probably wasn't on the right, yet now he is described as being far right. So, we live in a weird world. But the fact is, all of these allegations, which come from over 20 years ago, the mainstream media did not give a damn. I mean, I was at the Sun, Carol, when Russell Brand was a hero. I mean, he was being named our Shagger of the Year multiple times. So there is an absolute clear correlation between he questions the narrative on the two big issues of our time, COVID and the war in Ukraine, and they come for him. And they come for him in an almost deranged manner, right? Like, and this is not to say, because people get very sensitive about this, I'm not defending all of Russell Brand's behavior for his entire life. By the way, neither is he. He's very clear about...
He's very honest about it,
about how depraved his behavior was when he was in the showbiz world, the entertainment world. But you cannot tell me that when Channel 4 partners with the Times, partners with the Metropolitan Police, and then the rest of the mainstream media, that this was not in some way politically motivated. In some way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it was like a massive coordinated pile-on, wasn't it? It was the same with you, though.
Correct.
Correct. People would be coming out of the woodwork with completely untrue things, and you were completely vindicated. And it's exactly the same. And it's a witch hunt, because they can't have people being popular and out there telling people the truth and trying to warn them about what's going on. And Russell Brand is a very good example now. I mean, he's turned about completely, and he always seems to be in court. I know he's in court again, I think, at the moment, isn't he? Is it going on right now?
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, look, it feels to me like the state will not stop until Russell Brand and the Tate brothers and Tommy Robinson are behind bars. That's how I feel about it. And I do have a personal experience with this. I know what it's like. And with me, based on total lies, they were able to achieve their goal, which was to drive me out of the mainstream media. But of course, that's where, thank God, we and really it's down to Trump, isn't it? I couldn't be doing this probably on YouTube if Trump wasn't in the White House. Like, that is how direct the change has been when it comes to free speech.
Yeah, when you think about it, you had a bit of a lucky escape, didn't you, really? I mean, see the state of GB News now, and it's
the definition of controlled opposition now, Carol, the definition of it.
It's got to be, hasn't it? I mean, with all the stuff with reform and everything, it's like, they're just in complete denial of what's going on. Now, that's the big question. Who's paying these organisations? Like Talk TV, I think, is the same. And they just buy into everything that you imagine the government wants people to hear. The BBC have been like that for donkey's years. Channel 4 has always been like that. But now these two supposedly independent media organisations are being obviously, I don't want to say bought, but they've got to be bought, haven't they?
Well,
bought
the thing is,
paid for.
But they are the definition of that, because remember, they are controlled by billionaires with their own business interests and their own desire to get close to the government. And look, I know what it's work for billionaires. I did it for 20 years. I hoped GB News was going to be different. I think there were really positive signs in the early days when almost like GB News was considered a joke and the establishment wasn't scared of it. At that point, we did quite amazing stuff. Like, I think about the Mark Stein days, for example. But there was a clear change. Neil Oliver, exactly. But there was a clear change. I mean, we were there. We saw it, didn't we? It's like as soon as they jettisoned Mark Stein, hoping to appeal to the establishment, replaced him with Jacob Rees-Mogg, that's where it changed. So a lot of people don't want to hear this. This is a problem, Carol, because I understand, right? You want to have hope. And the hope at the moment is that GB News is different and that Reform UK is different, that is going to be the saviour. I understand that. What I think, I mean, Tommy Robinson, when he was released, said the mainstream media is the cancer killing the United Kingdom. The independent media is the cure. And that is where I think I now fit, I guess, into the ecosystem, because what we can do is hopefully help move the Overton window. Like, okay, if Reform UK is the best that we've got, I'm not convinced at this point it is, with 4 years out from election. But let's just say it is, right? It's the best option. Okay, well then we bloody need to move that Overton window to make them braver. Because right now they are so weak.
They're pretty pathetic, aren't they? The infighting, that's one thing. The fact that they seem to kowtow to every other narrative that the government seems to be dictating to the other parties, that they all say the same thing. And I've always said this with politicians: I don't trust Reform at all. I don't trust any of them. It's like all politicians are the same. They just have different faces, and it's like, why do you believe in the country? Do you want to make it a better place for the people that are voting for you? What or what? Are you just in it for yourself? And Reform are beginning to look like that. And even Nigel Farage, who I had great hopes for.
Yeah.
It's so disappointing, Dan, because it was a party that was going to come up and it might have made a difference a while ago, but now suddenly it just seems to be giving in to everything. And Nigel saying, it's not possible to deport illegal immigrants, all these things. It's like, hang on a minute, no, you're the one who used to hang out on Dover Beach and expose all this stuff, and now you say, no, we can't deport them, it's not realistic. There's just so many things. Richard Tice, don't trust him either. I don't trust anybody within that party. It's almost like it's a Trojan horse. Do you know what I mean? Get it in and everyone will vote for it. And everyone's kind of falling for Reform. And then once they're in, they do exactly what Keir Starmer and the last Tory government would be doing.
That is my fundamental view on this, right? What is the point of Reform UK gaining power if they actually have no plans to change anything? And I think it's the big difference between Trump term 1 and Trump term 2. And it's like, there has to be that sort of energy. There has to be term 2 energy, or otherwise it's going to be pointless, and nothing will change.
Yeah. Why don't we have someone like Trump? Why don't we have someone who will storm in there and change everything on day one, like he started as he meant to go on? And I'm kind of jealous, and I would love to go and live in America, but obviously it's too far to get in a dinghy to go over there and just claim asylum, isn't it? I can't do it. And I'd have to get a green card, and I'd have to, it would be impossible. But while he's president, I would go and live there if I could, but I can't.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.